Welcome to the Foundation Phase Network meeting for the autumn term. I'm Joanne Davis, a Supporting Improvement Advisor within the Foundation Phase team in Gware. My colleagues are Anna Hughes and Gware Larry Thomas. We really miss seeing you in person, and we hope you and everyone in your school is keeping well. This is the agenda for today. The focus of this afternoon is health and well-being, with strategies to support effective learning. A brief introduction into the world of schemas, identifying trauma and how to support children, a good practice case study from Hannah Williams, Deputy Head Teacher at Ysgol y Foryd, and then a quick overview of the Gware Support Centre and an update on the personal assessments for reading and maths procedural and numerical reasoning assessments. We hope the children are settling back well into school under these difficult circumstances. I'm sure you're finding children expressing a range of feelings and emotions, and we are sure their experiences during lockdown have ranged immensely. This network event is hopefully giving you an insight into an aspect to consider when designing your new curriculum, and also ideas to support children's personal, social development and their well-being at this moment in time. There may be strategies within the presentation that you may find useful to share with parents. You are welcome to share information and activities from these slides with them. And thank you to the pupils of Ysgol Suckden for sharing their video, having lots of fun splashing in the puddles. These are the Curriculum for Wales documents which you can find on the Hub website. If we could draw your attention to the 4 documents, which are Introduction to Curriculum for Wales Guidance, Summary of Legislation, Designing Your Curriculum, and Supporting Learner Progression and Assessment. These are included in the Getting Started section for the new curriculum. We would advise you to become familiar with these sections before diving into the 6 areas of learning and experiences. Today we would like to highlight the Designing Your Curriculum section, as it contains relevant information on what we are covering during this network meeting. Within Designing Your Curriculum, there is a section on implementation and practical considerations. There are key considerations for the foundation phase within this section, such as pedagogy, the 12 pedagogical principles, and the early progression steps. There will be pre-progression steps 1, which are the enabling steps, which are currently being produced. To support the curriculum, the pedagogy should help learners to develop a strong disposition for learning. The learning environment and experiences you provide through authentic learning opportunities should promote independence, perseverance, and resilience, to name a few. You can't teach health and well-being, such as perseverance and resilience, separately. It is incorporated in all aspects of learning. Effective pedagogy relies on an in-depth understanding of child and adolescent development. An important stimulus for nurturing effective child development is by providing a supportive environment which supports their needs. As noted in the Planning Your Curriculum documents, providing an environment that allows schematic learning to take place is recognised. During the session, we will give you examples of resources and activities that can support children's schematic learning and behaviours, which you can provide in your environment. A definition of schemas is: schemas are patterns of repeatable actions that lead to early categories and then logical classifications. Well, it's really a fancy word for the urges that children have to do things like climb, throw things and hide in small places. They appear through play, Perhaps it is the way they choose to do things, or what they desperately need to do out of the blue. What is the urge? It's the biological path of a child's development and learning. Sometimes this can be seen as inappropriate behaviour. When the schema is observed and recognised, we are able to redirect it appropriately. Piaget and Vygotsky have been talking about schemas years ago, and recently Dr. Stella Louie and Sally Featherstone have been raising awareness of schemas and have written a book, Understanding Schemas in Young Children. Some children have one schema and others have a cluster of schemas. It can change from one child to another. They can have the same schema, but it looks different depending on a child's interest. Children can sometimes ditch a schema, and you might see it for a while, and then they go back to the previous schema or pick it up later on. Schemas help us to organise and process our thoughts and feelings. They help us to think as we get older, as they do not go away. They just get more and more sophisticated. It is usually more obvious in children up to 5 years old, and there are stages of schematic play. Here are examples of the main schemas, firstly beginning with orientation. This is an interest in seeing things from different angles. Children hanging upside down from the slide or climbing frame, and they may turn the toys and objects upside down as they look at them. They are learning about balance, height, weight, and width. Positioning. This is an interest in carefully placing objects or themselves in patterns or rows. The schema may be seen when children line up toys, books, or other objects and position them either on top, under, around the edge of, behind, and next to each other. They are learning about order, sequencing, classification, shape, symmetry, and one-to-one correspondence. Connecting. An interest in fastening and joining things together and in taking them apart too. This schema can be seen in children's actions when they join train tracks, attach ropes to climbing frames, get fascinated with string, and even tie their own legs together. Trajectory. An interest in how objects, people move and how children can affect movement. This schema can be seen in children's actions when they drop objects, jump, swing, and climb up and down repeatedly. They are learning about height, speed, distance, and how things move. Enclosure. This is an interest in creating and or occupying enclosed spaces. It can be children's actions as they create structures in which they sometimes enclose themselves or objects. Some spaces may be left empty, others may be filled with objects. They are finding out about size, shape, measurement, and volume of spaces. Transporting. This is an interest in moving themselves around and transporting objects. Once they are mobile, babies and children begin to move objects and themselves from one place to another using bags, bikes, trucks, pockets, etc. Children are learning about adding, subtraction, and division. Enveloping. This is an interest in covering and wrapping objects or themselves, or putting things inside bags, baskets, and containers. Sometimes children will drape themselves in fabrics or clothing such as hoods, hats, gloves, cloaks, or become interested in wrapping things and securing them with string or tape. They are exploring the idea of covering objects, spaces, and themselves. And finally, rotation. This is an interest in things which turn, such as knobs, taps, keys, wind-up toys. This schema can also be seen in actions when they run or ride around on their bikes, in circles, or spin around and round, or make circle and spiral patterns in paint or other messy play. They are developing an understanding of how they and objects turn. So here are some examples of resources and experiences you can provide in your environment, indoors and outdoors, to allow schematic behaviours. So for orientation, if you have tunnels, large boxes, den play, lots of sheets, fabrics and pegs, and for shadow play, an overhead projector, torch, whiteboard, and any loose parts to create shadows. For positioning, you need an object to hang things on, for example, a kitchen roll holder or mug tree, and lots of collections of ringed resources, for example, bangles, curtain rings, or hair scrunchies. In the mug kitchen, you could have baking trays, ice cube trays, and outside or indoors, objects with holes, for example, outdoor tyres, where there are buckets of 1 or 2 collections of loose parts scattered around the tyres. For enclosure, you can provide a digging pit or mud kitchen, and objects to bury, for example, dinosaurs, old jewellery, or treasures to find. A try it on section in your role play, where there are a selection of hats, scarves and sunglasses, and a mirror to observe themselves. And in block play, lots of objects for them to enclose in the blocks, for example, animals, cars, or themselves. So resources to provide for the trajectory schema are cut-up types with a tennis ball in the bottom, or bean bags, and similar items to the positioning schema, for example, objects to throw into a tyre or bucket. Then objects to fill up, so a collection of clear bottles, scoops and funnels, and then pouring materials, for example, sand, water, rice and pulses. And objects to squirt, so a sponge filled with water, squeezy bottles, and a ramp which water can travel down, pushing the objects down. The connecting schema, so an indoors and outdoors water area with large loose parts, for example, drain pipes, funnels. Connecting loose parts in the construction area, and objects to pull along, so providing string, boxes, tubes, coasters. And for the transporting schema, little safe boxes, suitcases, baskets, bags, small boxes to collect items in, and objects to slide along, so providing rope, pots, string, ribbon, and a pulley system. And transporting water, so therefore providing large loose parts outside, buckets, pipes and sponges. So providing objects for the enveloping schema, you could provide lots of boxes with lids and discs, bangles, money, coasters to pop into the boxes, and then providing objects to post, so envelopes, letters, a post box and a post bag. And providing resources for malleable in motion, so that's fluid resources, for example, sand, rice, couscous, and objects to cover in those resources. And then pop it in a sock, so a selection of socks with loose parts, obviously, to pop into the sock. And then finally, the rotation schema. You could provide a lazy Susan with loose parts, or a pestle and mortar, or a salad spinner, whisks and sand and pebbles and paint for children to turn round and round with their fingers or other objects. And then mixing it up, so a selection of herbal tea bags or glitter, couscous or rice, and objects to turn things round and round and stirring. And then finally, washing large objects outdoors is a good way for children to be mopping round and round or using a sponge go in a round and round action. If you think of the children you have in your class, you could observe and identify their schema. How can you support this and provide resources for their natural schematic play and behaviour indoors and outdoors? And then think, how can I use this to support their learning? Thinking of the skills you are currently teaching. For example, if you are counting forwards and backwards from 10, you could provide objects to post, to throw, to mix, to spin, and to wrap, so that they are practicing counting forwards and backwards up to 10 in their natural schematic play. Another factor which affects behaviour is trauma. We are only touching on this today, but there is training which is called Trauma Informed Schools, run by Carol Harper. There is a course planned for November, so keep a lookout on the bulletin. It is a diploma which is 10 sessions of training. The next slides and the good practice will give you an overview of trauma-informed schools and its strategies. If a child has experienced trauma, it will affect the emotional system within the brain and will in turn have many effects on systems within their bodies and their behaviour. If a child displays any behavioural problems, the first port of call is to find out if that child or the child's family has a history of trauma. The effect can pass through generations. The trained practitioner would conduct an Adverse Childhood Effects ACE study questionnaire. Examples of the questions include: has the child been abused? A member of the family been in prison? And the more ACEs a child has, the more effects it has on the body. When children usually display behavioural problems, it is not possible to reason with them at this point in time. The best course of action is to remain calm and try to bring an element of play into the situation. For example, if a child is shouting, you could respond with, "Wow, you've got a loud voice. I bet you're a good singer." Perhaps these children would benefit also from a regulating aid, for example, something to hold which they keep in their pocket. With children who are dealing with trauma, it is a good idea to have an emotional available adult for the child. This would be the same adult available when the child arrives in school, to greet the child, and to pop in to see the child is okay at break and lunch times, with a simple gesture or question to gauge how they are feeling. It may be a good idea to have 2 adults available for the child in case one adult is off ill. If the child is upset or not feeling good, the adult should be available to empathise with the child, recognise their feelings and their worries by saying, "I can tell you are feeling angry or worried today. I wonder what has made you feel like this." This will support the child feel listened to and hopefully calmer and understood. The adult can then make other adults that are in contact with the child aware of their feelings that day. Avoid saying everything will be okay, as this is often not the case. This is a little case study of a Year 2 child who has regular outbursts and hits other children on the yard. She doesn't feel safe to feel sad, therefore the anger replaces the feeling of sadness. The trauma-informed practitioner supported the child to create an empathy drawing. This was created on A3 paper, but for the purpose of today we have shown it in PicArt. Through the drawings they found out that the child's father is in the army. When the father is at home, everything is great and there is a feeling of love and she feels happy. When she sees the bag coming out for the father to return to the army, the child feels sad and worries. This turns into anger and being unable to control their emotions and cope with playground disputes. Loose Parts and Small World is a useful way for children to explain and express their feelings. It helps them to describe what has happened to make them feel unhappy, worried, and angry, or the opposite. This picture shows how a child left the house that morning, had an argument with their sister in the car, and when coming into school, the emotional available adult was not there, and they refused to come into school. This would help the child to be able to explain their feelings and for the adults to understand the context of the child's behaviour, to empathise, recognise their emotions, and help that it does not happen again. This is a program called Motional, which tracks a child or group of children emotional and well-being development. It measures different elements such as care, panic, fear, play, and confidence. What is useful is that it gives you a snapshot of where they are for each area and what needs to be developed, and gives you programs to follow for the areas needed. These are two snapshots from the child in the first case study. At first, the child had low play and seek systems, but high panic and grief. That is when the father returns back to the army. Following the program over the next few weeks, the second snapshot shows how these systems have improved by the panic and grief lowering and the play and seeking systems increasing. Motional creates programs to target the support needed after the snapshot is made. These are the programs of support created for the child in the case study. Here we have bubbles within bubbles. This is a way for a child to control their breathing by blowing bubbles that are different sizes. And Safe Place Shoebox. This is designed and created by the child as a physical representation of a calming and safe place. And finally, Sand World is the way the child in the case study created a scene describing family life at home. The bird is a representation of the dad flying away to the army. These strategies give the child techniques to use when feeling upset and helps them to feel that their feelings are being recognised and understood. They are able to talk through them by using visual representations and objects, which supports the child understand their own feelings and explain them to others. This is another activity that they did. The child is telling the teacher what she would like them to know. That she wants to sit with other children, she likes cuddles, she thinks about her mum and her dad when she is in school. And this information could become part of the one-page profile. And the final activity is Can You Help Me Understand? This is an element of empathy when they draw inside their body like an X-ray. The sad faces on her feet are when her feet feel heavy, my heart is broken, and my eyes feel funny, I can't see properly. This is an opportunity to talk through their emotions as well and how they are feeling. We hope that this session has been useful insight into how your environment and activities that can help people talk and discuss their feelings with you. And now over to Hannah Williams from Ysgol y Borid. Hannah has completed the Diploma for Trauma-Informed Schools, and she is going to share with you some of her experiences. Thank you, Hannah, for creating and sharing your presentation with us. We would like to share with you resources that are currently available on GWER's Support Centre. This is accessible through GWER's main page, and you can see the Support Centre as the first tab at the top of the page. When you enter the Support Centre, the first thing you need to do is choose your language. This is the main home page. We will now go through the resources and where they can be found through each of these tabs. First, we will look at the Teaching and Learning tab. Under the Accelerating Skills tab, you will find the Accelerating Skills model for the foundation phase and exemplar learning sequences for different year groups following the Accelerating Skills model. In distance learning, we have 3 models for nursery and reception and years 1 and 2, with examples of suitable home learning activities. We also have videos from 3 different schools and year groups. The teachers have shared different ways they have engaged learners over the lockdown period. There are lots of ideas how to keep learners engaged and a continuum of learning, which you may find useful. For example, if you have a class or pupils isolating. In the Blended Learning tab, there is a model for blended learning and examples of suitable activities for nursery and reception and years 1 and 2, exemplifying the model. The examples contain videos and activities where the practitioner is demonstrating the activity and providing guidance for parents and children. The tab for teaching assistants contains information about a Google Classroom specifically for teaching assistants. Your head teacher will have the code to join this class. In the Digital Learning tab, there are webinars for primary schools, how-to videos for different apps such as J2E, Adobe Spark, Post and Video, and digital learning resources such as On Your Marks on the Google Classroom. In the Wellbeing tab, there is a tab for pupil engagement within Wellbeing. This contains the same videos as in the distance learning model. If you change to the Welsh language site in Gymraeg, there are links to the Welsh nursery rhymes, online books within the Cyfnod Sylfaen tab. And on the Welsh and English site, there are exemplar blended learning models, especially useful for Welsh medium schools with English-speaking parents. And finally, the Webinar tab. Within the Webinars tab, there are past webinars that have already been presented for you to watch at your own convenience. As you see, we have uploaded the Accelerating Skills webinar and the recordings from the Compact Profile training. Today's video will be uploaded to the site if you or any of your colleagues may wish to view it at a later date. An update on the personal assessments for years 2 to 6. The assessment site is now available. Head teachers will need to log into the site and accept the data sharing agreement before their staff can schedule assessments and access reports on their learners. Procedural numeracy and reading assessments are now available for schools to use at any time they consider appropriate. For numeracy, the feedback on skills and age standardised scores and progress reports are refreshed after each assessment is taken. For reading, feedback on skills is available after each assessment. Age standardised scores and progress reports will be available at the end of the school year, after all learners have taken the assessments at least once. The trials for numeracy reasoning have been delayed due to COVID-19. Reasoning assessments will therefore be trialled this school year and will not become statutory assessments until the 2021-22 school year. No numerical reasoning assessments will take place this year. Curriculum and assessment arrangements have been modified to a reasonable endeavours basis for the first month of the term. Personalised assessments for numeracy, procedural and reading will be statutory during the 2020-21 school year. There will be no statutory May 2021 testing window or any year after. For any queries about the personalised assessments, please go to tests@gwegogledd.cymru.
Pnawn da, my name's Wendy Williams and I'm the GWE Coordinator for the Teaching Assistants Learning Pathway or the TALP as it's sometimes known, which also includes the HLTA assessment process. Thank you to the Foundation Phase team for allowing me the opportunity to give a short presentation on two aspects of the learning pathway. Last week, a national induction programme was launched on a digital platform for newly appointed teaching assistants. Normally this programme would be held face-to-face, but because of COVID-19, we have had to adapt the programme. There are 4 modules: the Welsh education context, professional standards for assisting teaching, the curriculum for Wales and supporting frameworks, and pedagogy. Teaching assistants can complete the modules at a time that is convenient to them, and modules can be completed in more than one sitting. We suggest that the 4 modules are completed over a term, but this is entirely optional. At the end of term, we shall be holding a live session via Teams when teaching assistants who have completed the induction programme will be invited to attend. It will be an opportunity to reflect, contemplate next steps, to network and to ask any questions. Newly appointed teaching assistants wishing to gain access to the programme will need to complete a registration form using their Hub account. More information can be found in the GWER Bulletin and on the GWER website. During the lockdown, we created a Google Classroom for teaching assistants, which includes a variety of information and training that can be accessed at any time. Topics include Teaching Assistants Learning Pathway, the EWC, the Professional Learning Passport, Curriculum for Wales, Additional Learning Needs, Wellbeing, Outdoor Learning, and Accelerated Learning, to name but a few. It can be accessed at any time that suits you, and new resources are added regularly. To gain access to the classroom, you need a code, and that code can be obtained from me at wendywilliams@gwergogledd.cymru. You will need to use your Hub account to access the Google Classroom. The Aspiring HLTA Development Programme, Cylch 2, will shortly be open for applications. It is a 4-day development programme for experienced teaching assistants who wish to go forward to gain HLTA status. Due to the current situation, Cylch 2 will now be delivered on Teams with 8 half-day sessions. The expectation is that teaching assistants who gain a place on the Aspiring HLTA programme will go forward to apply for HLTA assessment. Participants will undertake enriching activities that build upon previous experience. They will develop their understanding of the role of an effective HLTA, develop their skills and attributes through self-review against the professional standards for assisting teaching, and develop their skills and practice of advancing the learning of whole classes. More details and the link to the application form may be found in the GWER Bulletin or the GWER website. You are also very welcome to contact me should you need any more information about the Aspiring HLTA Development Programme. The closing date for applications for Cylch 2 is November the 20th. So as I said, you're very welcome to contact me for any further information about the induction programme or the Aspiring HLTA programme on my email address, which is wendywilliams@gwergogledd.cymru. Diolch yn fawr.
And finally, a reminder of what's coming up in the coming autumn term for the foundation phase. For your information, we will be holding an online drop-in session once a month, which will be an opportunity for you to ask any questions related to the foundation phase. The link to join will be advertised on the GWER Bulletin and on GWER Cynraedd Twitter page. Webinars. Next month, there will be an online webinar which will include how to develop mathematical skills and numeracy outdoors. There will be a Christmassy, wintry feel to this training, which we hope you will find useful in the coming weeks. All of our activities will have a flexible method of delivery, whether in school and at home, or just at home, depending on the current situation. We now have a Gwer Cynraedd Twitter page, which the primary team uses to advertise events, retweets ideas and useful information from the primary schools across the region. Please follow and tag us. And just a reminder that we advertise all events and important information in the weekly bulletin, which you can receive direct to your email when you sign up through the tab on the Gwer website. This will be one of the main ways we advertise future events for the foundation phase. It is published every Tuesday afternoon. If you have any queries or an inquiry, please email myself at joannedavis@gwergogledd.cymru. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have found this information useful. Thank you so much for listening to us this afternoon. We hope you have found this information useful, and a special thanks to Hannah Williams for her lovely presentation from Ysgol y Forward. Here are two quotes we would like to leave you with. Diolch yn fawr.